What's up, everybody? Welcome to the Next Pats podcast. I'm Phil Perry. We're coming at you kind of live, not really live, but a little bit live from Los Angeles. We are downtown. We are here for the Super Bowl, Rams, Bengals. Lots of discussions for us, and we're focused on the team-building stuff to get into when it comes to these two teams. Two very different approaches, two very different styles. But today we've got an interesting treat for you. We have a running back heavy Next Pats podcast. It's not something we do all that often because we know what's next in the NFL doesn't usually center around that particular position, unfortunately for those guys. But we are thinking always about what might be next in terms of Mac Jones's development and what helps him get to that next step, that next level. I thought it was interesting last week when Joe Banner, longtime NFL executive, told us if the Patriots can just focus on the middle of the field, those pass-catching backs, they can't be covered. Is that really what the Patriots should be doing next to help out their young quarterback? So we dug even deeper into that topic. We've got two phenomenal pass-catching running backs on the podcast this week. We're talking to Shane Vereen, former Patriot and New York Giant. Great conversation with him. We're also talking to one of the most productive running backs in league history, top 10 all-time in all-purpose yardage, Darren Sproles, about how best to build around Mac Jones. And also, we nibble away at the question of, can you win in today's NFL by being a run-first, run-heavy offense? Because we know, it seems at least, as though everything's trending toward the passing game. But what about the running backs? What about the offensive line? What about that kind of approach that the Patriots loved last season? Can they continue it and win at a high level? Great discussion with both these guys, Vereen and Sproles. Let's hit Shane Vereen first, and then we'll transition right into our conversation with Darren Sproles. Let's get to Shane Vereen right now.
All right, very excited to have with us on Next Pats, Shane Vereen, longtime Patriots running back, Giants as well. Shane, I have to ask you first and foremost.
Yeah.
You may have been offended a couple of weeks ago when you, like everybody else, watched Bills Chiefs, and immediately after that game was over, people were calling it the greatest football game ever played. And the reason I say you might have been offended because you played in what I consider the greatest football game ever played. And not only did you play, but you had an MVP caliber performance in the Super Bowl, Patriots-Seahawks. Were you offended? How dare they call that the greatest game of all time, Shane Vereen? Am I right?
You can't be offended when they're talking about championship games and not Super Bowls, you know? So it's probably the greatest championship game. I'll give them that, but it's not the greatest Super Bowl.
It wasn't even it was the divisional round,
You're
Shane.
right. You're right.
I mean, what are we talking about here?
You're absolutely right. Yes, I mean, it is what it is. I'm very confident in my standing as far as great games are concerned.
Do you look at that honestly? And I know you're biased, okay? We get that to a certain degree. But do you feel as though, I'm sure people continue to bring that game up to you even now, almost a decade later. Do you feel like that was the greatest game ever played?
It was the greatest game I've ever played. I know that much. It's so subjective to your loyalties, to your fan base. It's so subjective to, the odds going into a game. Because a couple years after the Seahawks game, you could make a point that the Falcons Patriots game was the greatest game, and that would be a tough one for me to argue. Outside of, I think what made it the greatest game, Super Bowl 49, was that we had the number one offense going against the number one defense, and scored 14 points in the fourth quarter against a defense that hadn't given up more than 10 for a majority of their the late in their season. So we had to come back and what it took for that team, the Patriots team that I was on, what it took for us to get that W. It was a lot, it was a lot of teamwork. It was a lot of digging down deep. I remember after the game, I was exhausted. My body was cramping up. We left it all out there. And so it'll always be a special game.
Man, I had a chance to watch the game back. It was on our flight out here to LA, from Boston to LA.
Yeah, I saw it the other night. Yeah.
Oh man, the stakes, just the number of Hall of Fame caliber players in that game, the head coaches involved, how it ended really from start to finish. I agree with you. Falcons, Patriots, people always remember that as a great Super Bowl, but start to finish, the way it was played, just a high end caliber play, that to me is the greatest game ever. And again, MVP caliber performance from our guy here, Shane Vereen. Shane,
Thank you.
let's look ahead a little bit. Let's keep it. We're going to keep it Patriots related, but we are going to mix in the Super Bowl here because obviously you've got a young quarterback from Cincinnati and Joe Burrow who has made this quantum leap, right, from being a solid rookie quarterback who ends up getting injured into the Super Bowl now. And I think a lot of people look at it and they say, well, they added a big time weapon on the outside for that guy, and look what it's done for him. It's made him one of the best quarterbacks in football. As somebody who obviously has been a part of some really high-end offenses, but also played a position that was viewed and still is in a lot of places as sort of the quarterback's security blanket.
Right.
What to you would be the best way to help Mac Jones try to make a similar leap? Is it get that big-time number one guy on the outside, like the Bengals did with Jamar Chase? Or is it make sure he's got the middle of the field, that short area of the field figured out, because when he gets into trouble, that's exactly what he needs? How do you view it?
You know, I think it's a little bit of both. You know, I don't think a receiver, I don't think it'll help. A receiver, a big time receiver, like a Jamar Chase caliber type of receiver, of course it's going to help. Any receiver with that much talent is going to help a team win. It's going to help an offense and it's going to help a quarterback. But the progression of Mac Jones from week one until the end of the season, I saw a significant improvement. I think Mac Jones, what he lacks maybe in physical ability, he makes up for in mental fortitude, and mental toughness. And I just want to see what he does next year. I don't think he needs much. I think the experience that he was able to gain, the coaching that he was able to gain, the way that they eased him into the offense and allowed him to determine when they're going to open more up. I think that it was so smart by Coach Belichick and Coach McDaniels to not keep the reins on him, but just understand what makes him great, understand what he's good at, and allowing him to do that and not really overloading him. A lot of times I feel like with rookie quarterbacks, that's what happens. But I'm excited. I don't think Mac Jones needs much. I think the experience that he got his rookie year, I think the way that they lost to Buffalo, that's gonna be a very big motivating factor this offseason. And so I don't think he needs much. Of course, they're going to add weapons to help him. I like the run game. The defense will play better next year, and I'm excited to see what Mac Jones does.
If you had to pick, if I'm forcing you to pick, gun to your head, Shane Vereen,
yeah,
and you have the opportunity to, whether it's even just getting James White back healthy, who we both, know and really respect, but he's coming off a serious injury. If you're a young passer, do you think a Shane Vereen type? Does he need a Shane Vereen for 2022?
Yeah, it helps, especially a player like me, a James White, and Alvin Kamara. What helps our style of running back? Not only can we run the ball, but the mismatches in the pass game. That's what makes us special. That's where we can really reach our peak as far as a route running running back or a pass catching running, whatever term you want to use. It's the mismatch. It's the problem of if you bring in nickel defense and have an extra defender in the pass game, we can run the ball because it's a light box. If you bring in and stack the box, a 7-man box, now we're one-on-one with a linebacker, and any of those backs that I name, and I can continue. Christian McCaffrey, there's a load of backs now that's a mismatch, and the ball should go there. So of course, getting James White back is going to help tremendously. I still haven't seen a linebacker cover him. I haven't seen a nickel really stick with him too well either. I expect big things if he's able to come back and be himself again next year. But that's where, it really helps a quarterback is the mismatch situation. And like you said, it's a security blanket, but the security, I think, comes from understanding that the running back is going to be in the right spot at the right time when you need him. I think that's why me and Tom got along so well and why we gelled so well together is he knew where I was going to be. I could read the defenses the way that he was reading the defense. So I knew if the play, I was supposed to sit on the hash, but there's a man on the hash, I'm going to slide inside. He knows I'm going to slide inside. He knows where I'm going to be, and he can dump it off real quick. So it's that chemistry and it's that understanding. We're reading the same thing, and I'm always going to be there where you need me.
Do you think, I think a lot of fans remember you obviously as a pass catching back, Shane, but you had 4 carries in that Super Bowl as well to go along with the 11 catches.
Yeah.
And you've been in some great running back rooms. Do you think because the Patriots were so run heavy last year, and I would expect that part of that was due to the fact that they had a rookie quarterback, but even when you look at it around the league in terms of running in neutral, quote unquote, neutral situation. So the score is close. It's not 2 minute. It's not end of the game, but 1st and 10, middle of the field, score is close type of situations. The Patriots, they ran it more frequently than just about every other team in the league. They were run heavy, that by definition. Do you think that can win though in today's NFL in 2022 at a high level? Because we're looking at these teams now and the Bengals offense goes the way Joe Burrow goes, the Rams, all of these teams that were really, whether it's the last 4 or the last 8 teams left in the playoffs, it was really driven by the passing game. So do you feel like in today's league that you can still be that run heavy attack and win at a high level?
I absolutely do. And I would even say if the Chiefs had a more prominent run game, then they win the AFC Championship game. That second half is completely dominated by the Chiefs offense, running the football, converting first downs. It's one thing to run the football. It's another thing to have a concerted effort that we're going to run the ball 20 to 30 times a game. And that's our game plan coming into the game. It's physical. What it does when you run heavy in the first 3 quarters, that defensive line, the pass rush slows down, the gaps start to get bigger. You're controlling the ball. You're controlling the tempo of the game. All that is still very prominent. A lot of teams now are controlling the tempo, controlling the game via the quarterback, via the pass game. But that's not to say that you cannot have an effective run game, which still allows you to control the ball, allows you to be physical, allows you to win the line of scrimmage. I think that all of that really will help any quarterback. We talk about Joe Burrow, but Joe Mixon was one of the best running backs this year. And we don't really talk about him that much. He had over 1,200 yards. He's a very good back. And I don't know if Joe Burrow, he was getting sacked. What I do give Joe Burrow credit for, sorry, I'm talking a lot. What I do give Joe Burrow credit for is all the sacks that he was able to take, but he still continues to stand strong in the pocket. Also, the run game of Joe Mixon, especially in the red zone, really, really opened things up for Joe Burrow. It allowed Chase to be in one-on-one situations because of the threat of the run game. It allowed T. Higgins to be the mismatch for that offense, as well as the tight end to be a mismatch because you have to allocate players to stop the run. So I definitely think it works in conjunction, and it's a very good marriage when you can run the football and know you can run the football.
However, this Patriots offense is organized for 2022. They're going to need a chief organizer, Shane. Yeah. And so the last thing I wanted to ask you, now that Josh McDaniels has moved on, he's going to be head coach of the Raiders, is about who might be next at offensive coordinator. And one name that I have heard brought up consistently is a guy that you played for, your rookie year before he ended up moving on. It's Bill O'Brien.
Yeah.
We've heard a lot of different descriptions for Bill O'Brien and his coaching style over the years, but if you had to choose one word to describe Bill O'Brien, what would it be and why?
Intensity. And I don't mean that in a negative way. I mean that he takes every day extremely seriously. He approaches every practice as an opportunity to get better. I think not just Coach O'Brien, but I think that whole coaching staff in New England, they take practice so seriously. And it's because when you get to the game, we go through a lot in practice. We go through a lot in camp. We're getting yelled at in meetings and on the field, but they do that. And then you go to the game, there's no yelling. They just let you go play because they trust you, because they've seen you put the work in. Otherwise, they weren't going to put you out there. But back to Billy O, I loved his intensity week in and week out, day in and day out. In the middle of camp, late in the season, you need a coach like that to get you up and to get you ready to go for practice and to get you excited for the game on Sunday. So I would say intense and he's a successful offensive coach. He really is. And I would expect Coach Belichick to bring somebody back in that he has worked with before and trusts.
Worked well with a young running back. Shane Vereen is a rookie, second round pick back in the day, set him up for success down the line. I think Patriots fans are hoping whoever comes in to be that offensive coordinator can just get Mac Jones on that trajectory that it already seems like he's on. So I guess it's just a matter of being able to continue that thing and allowing him to make whatever steps he needs to make moving forward. Shane Vereen, this has been a great conversation, my friend. Thanks so much for being with us here on Next Pats, and enjoy the rest of Super Bowl week.
Yeah, I appreciate you having me. Anytime you need me, just give me a ring, and enjoy Super Bowl. I know you're out there, so enjoy it. Say hi to my LA restaurants for me, please. I miss them.
Oh God, you need to can you give us one LA restaurant suggestion before you go, Shane? Give us your number one.
My favorite restaurant in the world is Mastro's. It's a steakhouse. There's one in Beverly Hills, but the one is in Malibu. That's the one you want. Mastro's in Malibu. Bring your checkbook, but it'll be worth every penny.
Hey, this is on Papa NBC this week, all Shane. Right. So we're good. So my checkbook's staying in the hotel room.
Okay,
this one will be on big old NBC. So Mastro's, and I'm getting a what? What am I getting there?
Ooh, Mastro's. It's a steakhouse, but the one in Malibu has a great seafood selection as well. They even have sushi, so you can get a little surf and turf. You can go however you want. I will also say, if you're in Santa Monica, there's a place called Blue Plate Taco. It's right on Main Street. It's right by the beach. Some of the best Mexican food, and get the lobster tacos, but it's some of the best Mexican food that's in LA.
I love it. So we've got big picture NFL team building conversation from Shane Vereen. We've got the greatest game of all time conversation in the books. And now we've got our LA restaurant recommendations. I'll be sure to enjoy all of the food that I have out here this week, Shane. And maybe I'll just send you pics and you can live vicariously through us. That'll be the first time you'll ever want to vicariously live through a podcaster. Okay. It's the first time for everything though, my friend.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. I appreciate it, man. Thank you.
All right. Great stuff there from Shane Vereen. It is important for us to bring up on the podcast this week that there is some uncertainty with that pass catching back spot. Obviously, Brandon Bolden filled in for James White after White was injured in 2021. And filled in really admirably. But is he the person that you want to have at that position full time? Do you want to go into a season with him in that role? James White, meanwhile, hopefully he's able to come back from that injury, but he was in a contract year. That was a one-year deal he signed last offseason to be with the Patriots. He's now 30 years old, so we'll see what the future holds for James White, but still plenty of question marks about this third down back role in New England system. Maybe Ramondre Stevenson can handle a lot of those responsibilities. He's obviously a very capable pass catcher. The Patriots have Damian Harris, who can function a little bit as a receiver as well, although I don't think they would want him in that role full time. And then they have J.J. Taylor on the roster, an important name for us to bring up as we toss to our conversation with Darren Sproles, because Darren Sproles, undersized running back, he's been paying attention to J.J. Taylor. We talk about it right here.
All right, very happy to have with us now Darren Sproles, incredible 15-year career, 6th all-time in all-purpose yardage in the NFL. Darren's brought to us by Yahoo Sports. Make sure you're checking out Yahoo for all your fantasy and gaming needs. Darren Sproles, thanks so much for being with us on the Next Pats podcast.
Thank you for having me on. I appreciate it.
Darren, I think a lot of people that are our listeners will remember you and the team you were on that essentially ripped their hearts out in 2017. And you end up with a Super Bowl ring as part of that group. And just an unbelievable run by the Eagles that year. But do you ever run into Patriots fans from time to time and say that one should have been ours, man? Come on.
They say that, but you know what? Y'all got a whole bunch over there, though.
That's a good point. They've got it's always a good retort. You guys have got a fistful. Can you let somebody else have one every once in a while? That's well played on your part. And Darren, of course, we've got this. We've got the Super Bowl coming up here, and we're focused on this game from a variety of different angles. I think for us, as people who follow the Patriots closely, we're looking at the quarterbacks in particular. And what's interesting to me is that these quarterbacks, I think, would both be defined as, if you had to put them in a certain box, as pocket passers. And the game at that position has seemingly become more about athleticism as time has gone on. And yet these guys both do the majority of their work from the pocket. So from your perspective, do you feel like athleticism is a requirement for that position these days? Because the guy they have in New England isn't the greatest athlete, but they're still really high on him here.
It all depends on your team. You know what I'm saying? As long as your quarterback can throw, he has accuracy, that's all you need. Tom Brady couldn't run. Some of these teams right now, they're going to quarterback run game stuff. So if that's your offense, then you need a mobile quarterback.
And if you run to the Patriots offense and that style of offense that they've had for 2+ decades with Tom Brady, then you really, you don't. I think when people look at it, Darren, they see Joe Burrow and they see a guy who's not a next level athlete, but he's still athletic enough to pick up that yardage that he needs. And we saw him make a couple critical scrambles, especially late in that AFC Championship game. What's impressed you most about Joe Burrow's game? And I don't know how much of Mac Jones you've watched, but do you think that Mac Jones could approach what Joe Burrow is doing right now? Because when you compare them side by side, they've actually had pretty similar trajectories in terms of what they did in college and what they did as rookies in the league. And of course, we're still waiting to see what happens with Mac Jones. Joe Burrow took off in year 2. I think people here are hoping for a similar kind of path for him. But do you think Mac Jones could eventually kind of morph into something like a Joe Burrow?
I do. I love the way he never panics either. The sign of a great quarterback, they always going to stay calm. You know what I'm saying? I feel like he can be that quarterback.
It's worth mentioning too. I mean, you've worked with the best of the best, especially when it comes to pocket quarterbacks. So you're talking about Phil Rivers or Drew Brees. You've played with some next level guys at that position. And of course you were, I won't ask you to say it, Darren. I will say it for you. You were hugely important to the production levels that some of those guys were able to reach year after year after year. And we know even here in New England just how important having a pass catching back can be for a quarterback who, is looking to have that sort of safety valve option, that security blanket type of option. If you were the Patriots and you're looking at a young quarterback, what would be your priority in terms of building around that guy? The Bengals did it in a certain way. They got a number one receiver on the outside, and Joe Burrow took off, and now he's one of the best quarterbacks in football. I've talked to people who have said, hey, if you can get that pass catching back that the Patriots have often had, but James White, unfortunately, dealing with an injury, his contract is up at the end of last year. So there's some uncertainty in the backfield in New England in terms of that pass catching back role. Would that maybe be more valuable, in your opinion, than even getting that quote unquote stud on the outside?
With every quarterback, you need a quick outlet. I feel like a scat back is perfect for that offense. I feel like JJ Taylor, he can be that next guy though.
It's interesting you bring that name up because he's a guy that brought up comparisons to one Darren Sproles soon after he arrived to the Patriots. And, the Patriots have, legendary running backs coach Ivan Fierce here with us. He's seen a lot of football, and your name is the name that he brought up.
Yeah. The thing is about JJ is he's so short, it's really hard for the defense to see him. He can do a lot of damage, I feel like.
Well, when he has been given the opportunity to play, Darren, it's really been interesting because he has shown flashes, and it's not just as a receiving back. When he runs between the tackles, I think you're right. He's really difficult to find, number one, but he packs a punch too. Now, I remember watching him in a preseason game, and he actually was staying in on a pass protection assignment. And Leonard Williams, who's a stud defensive tackle for the Giants, sort of breaks through the line of scrimmage, and he put Leonard Williams, who's I think 310 pounds or thereabouts, on his back. And that to me said, okay, there's some physical uniqueness to what this guy is able to bring to the table. Did you find that guys felt the same way about you, Darren? Did you bring that same? Obviously, the athleticism is off the charts when it came to your career, but would guys ever, as you're going back to the huddle, say, man, I didn't even see you until you were 2 yards beyond the line of scrimmage?
Yeah, they would say it all the time. Like when they do see me, I'm already up on them. I'm 5'6". Then when my linemen stand up, my lineman is like 6'6". Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, they all tall. The linebacker would say, they couldn't see me at all, they said. So when my lineman would stand up, I would just get low. Like, you know what I'm saying? Just use your height.
Use those God-given skills and abilities and traits to your advantage.
That's right.
No doubt.
Right.
I do think, JJ Taylor has been a little bit of a forgotten man. Brandon Bolden stepped in that James White role for the Patriots last year and was really productive. But I wonder if they're looking towards that next guy. And maybe that is JJ Taylor. We know how much is put on running backs in terms of pass protection responsibility, especially if they're going to be asked to be that third down guy. And, he's still a young player. And so, he's maybe on that track in terms of his development to be able to take on a little bit more in 2022. The last question I want to ask you, Darren, and I love having these big picture football team building conversations, especially with somebody like you who not only had the great career that you had, but you've also been working with the Eagles as a personnel consultant. This is a big picture one that I think has been bandied about across the NFL for multiple years now. But the Patriots are a really run heavy team last year, Darren. And my question to you is, can you be a really run heavy team or a run first team in today's NFL and win at a high level, because it feels like so much right now is predicated on the passing game, and the teams that are the last ones left standing are usually the best passing offenses in football. So can you win at a high level with that kind of run first approach?
Yes, you can. With a run heavy type offense, you take a lot of pressure off your quarterback, but also the run game is going to help your play action game. You know what I'm saying? So you can get them big throws. So I feel like, yeah, they can win.
Well, I think the Patriots feel the same way. Clearly the Niners, what they've done last few years, I would say is a good example of a team that can play that style and still win at a high level. They've been, sniffing a Super Bowl for multiple years now, and who knows what happens next. Maybe they become even more run heavy with Trey Lance at quarterback, swapping him in for Jimmy Garoppolo, right. And who knows where that offense goes. Maybe that thing takes off. Darren Sproles, thank you so much for spending some time with us here, my friend. Want to remind the people again, Darren Sproles teaming up with Yahoo Sports. Make sure you're checking out Yahoo for all your fantasy and gaming needs ahead of the big game. Darren, thanks so much for being with us, man. And we'll have to check in with you down the line when JJ Taylor is among the league leaders in receptions for running backs in 2022. How about that?
Right. One thing I want to add, though, you can go to sports.yahoo.com or you can download the app. And I do know that Yahoo Sports is launching a free big game prompt quiz, and you can win up to $10,000. And they also are putting fans closer to the game with their $1 million daily fantasy contest. Like, for more info, just go to sports.yahoo.com or download the app for all your information.
Love it. Sports.yahoo.com. People love their props this time of year ahead of the big game, Darren. So we'll make sure that the people know that that's where they need to be. Thanks again for being with us here on Next Pats.
Really interesting there to hear Darren Sproles say, I think Mac Jones could get to where Joe Burrow is right now, talking about the confidence, the calm, the poise in the pocket that Mac Jones already has shown with just one season in the NFL. Who knows where he ends up in year two, but whether it's that guy on the outside or a third down back or a slot receiver or all three in some capacity, the Patriots are going to have to build up around Mac Jones to make sure they're getting the best out of that guy. It's just a question of what they prioritize. Do they approach it in the Joe Banner fashion, where they're building around the middle of the field and people that can attack that middle of the field area for their young quarterback who's going to really like to make those short to intermediate throws in that range? Or do they go get him a stud? Do they try to take the Bengals route, go after a Jamar Chase type, even though they're picking at number 21, not in the top 5, might be hard to do, but do they go after that true X and make Mac Jones' life a little bit easier that way? Time will tell, but thanks so much for listening to this week's Next Pats podcast coming at you from Los Angeles. We'll have plenty more Next Pats to digest in the near future. We're talking Senior Bowl still. We're even going to talk a little bit of Shrine Bowl, believe it or not, because there are some Patriots fits there as well. So make sure you're keeping an eye out for future Next Pats episodes. Until then, enjoy the Super Bowl. We'll talk to you next week.